Welcome to Relationships Matter. I'm Chanel Scott.
And I am Josh Powell.
And we have some amazing guests with us today. I'm so excited to have this conversation. We have our amazing expert, Dr. Jerome Maltzby. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks. We're so pleased to have you.
Pleasure
and we have my friend, Miss Duchess, a.k.a. Christina Lattimore with us. We're so excited to have you here and joining us. That's right. You know, I got to do that. She's a real person.
I'm loving that, though. I'm starting to, really love people allowing me to be really me, and not the facade that they created. So yeah, I love that.
You're already starting us off with a...
Look, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, as you all know, domestic violence has been a very hot topic in the media. And Dr. Maltzby, you have some tremendous experience in this area. So talk a little bit about what it is that you do.
Yes, I've been involved with domestic violence for the last, almost 16 years now. I'm a facilitator for male perpetrators of domestic violence.
Okay, wow.
And it's countywide in the state of Georgia. And it's been a unique experience, right? So really to be able to afford men an opportunity to get some new information, a new message about the men that they are. Not who they're told they need to be, but who they can be, right? To find their greater selves.
Yes.
And so it's been a great experience. I've seen so many men change their lives. Age group from 18 to 60. That conversation, black, white, Hispanic, all young. I even had a couple of Asians as well.
Wow,
you know?
A couple Asians. And
yes.
I want to make sure people heard what you said. Male perpetrators. You work with the male perpetrators, right?
Exactly.
Because you don't hear that often. You know, the focus is always on the victim, and they are the focus. But to have someone here who has some experience in the space where you work with people who have actually committed the offense is going to shed a lot of light on this particular topic today.
Yes, and if we're not about the families, because in most cases there's children involved, so if not healing the whole family entirely, what are we doing? It's out of balance.
Right.
Really out of balance. So my role working with the men is to bring balance to that scenario. Certainly the women should be protected at all times, no doubt. But at the same time, a man who's made a decision that didn't serve them well should have an opportunity to change. Change is possible for all of us.
And it's so funny. I was going to say, I was going to go back to, now this is the time.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of this conversation off camera.
Well, before you do that, hold on. Because real quick, he touched on the different cultures that he dealt with.
Okay.
Yes.
I think this is important. What are some of the commonalities within the different men coming from the different backgrounds that you see as signs?
Yeah, the common piece is their narratives. They come from some level of trauma.
Okay.
So in our community, we think of somebody who has to be in an asylum or could consider to be insane or have mental health issues that the blaring how society describes mental health. But mental health is so much complex than that. So the common denominator is there's some level of mental health disorder going on. Anger management, conflict resolution, lack of ability to do that. There's so many different things that are attached to that that are common no matter what race or background that you have.
Well, see, now it's so much packed. So I was going to go there. I'm going to come to you, but because you mentioned it, anger management. So just thinking about the video we just saw on social media this week. And the first thing that came to my mind was this man has a lot of built up aggression.
Yes.
Where does that come from to make someone act out in such a way where you literally put your feet on someone like their dog?
Yeah.
Like, where does that, how does that?
Well, we come from a society with a massive learned behavior. There's the societal things, then there's the cultural pieces, right? For African Americans, we have our own culture in terms of what we've been trained to, what family we grew up in, and all those type of things, right? Our psychosocial environments. And so basically how we grew up, what we're exposed to as young men, as children, gives a footprint of something, of an experience. And these footprints that these men are experiencing are some level of trauma.
Yeah.
And so from that trauma, they build a narrative. Then now they're saying to themselves, well, how I'm going to not have that experience emotionally. Because we don't talk about men's emotions.
Right.
We talk about women's emotions all day long, but we have emotions too, we have feelings too, and we can hurt. And so whatever we experience that hurt us that intensely can cause a traumatic experience. Then there's a narrative built behind that. I'm not going to ever let that happen to me again, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this, that, the other thing, right? And so now that follows them, we call those adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. So whatever adverse experience you've had, if it had not been dealt with, and there's some kind of intercession to heal from that, it walks with us. It stays with us. So now we can have an adult experience, but guess who shows up? That inner child. That's what happens, is that inner child still show up because it's not healed yet. So therefore, unfortunately, it carries on to all aspects of their life, whether it be in a relationship with another significant other, on the job, how they parent. All those areas are affected by that adverse experience. So that's the core of it. Now, how it develops as an adult, it can increase, get worse.
Wow.
But just knowing that the cause, right, is what's important. We see all the effects of it, but who's dealing with the cause of it? Where did it start? How did it start with the person? And that's what we do in terms of giving them new messages, new ways to change the way of thinking, rewrite their narratives, come with another way of living that's going to be conducive to be less consequential.
Okay. So to Dutch's question.
Yes. One thing that you said, though, that was really amazing for me, I think a lot of times, because being on the victim side of things, a lot of times people look, especially as Black women, really different. But to know that these experiences happen frequently in other races and other backgrounds, because I think it's like a dark cloud over Black men as like they're the most abusers. But all men are capable of abuse, no matter what race they come from. So I'm glad you said that. Now, my question is, can a man change from that? Because my thoughts, if I find out that a man has a background in domestic abuse, that's a immediately red flag. I'm like, especially because of my experiences.
Sure.
So I don't really see change in that space, or I haven't witnessed it. So in the back of my mind, I think, like, you know how sometimes people say, once a thief, always a thief? Once a woman beater, always a woman beater. And I think that's a common thought, especially in our communities.
Sure. So there's a word called rehabilitation. So defining what that means, one can rehabilitate from some said thing, right? Such as domestic violence. So for you, the question would be, because of your experience, have you been in a program? What have you done since then? Do you have any documentation to show me that you've been through something?
A piece of paper?
Well, there's because we don't give pieces of papers, illegitimately. If you get this certificate said you completed, then you completed it. Because the state of Georgia is mandating that we make sure that me as a facilitator, make sure that person is showing itself, not just sitting as a lump in a log. That they've
So you're
shown
tough on these men.
They are, absolutely.
Absolutely.
First thing I said, look, okay, when we start, let me just tell you, just don't let the title fool you, right? Game recognizes game, right?
Nice.
Been there, done that, And so if I can heal, not necessarily from being a perpetrator, not that, but just life on life terms, going through all my life challenges, if I can heal, then I know someone else can heal as well.
Right.
And the fact that because of the men that come through my course, I see it. I see evidence of it. And I see them become better fathers. But the first and foremost thing is to have a better relationship with yourself. Because however I see me, that's what you're going to see. Even behind smoke and mirrors, right? A person can see through those things eventually. So I work on them about themselves first. Let's redefine yourself as a man first. Because you've been getting a whole lot of misinformation, a lot of myths, a lot of cultural, generational things that's happened over time. We need to work on that.
Right.
Let's find that authentic you. Let's find that person who God has created itself through you, right, for you to represent that at a deeper level. And so I start with them first before we even get into about someone else. Because, there's all kind of stories, and everybody has a story. And I believe there's always two sides of the story. As I mentioned earlier, one of the subject matters that we talked about early on a few years ago was called provocation. A lot of women don't know how they're provoking, but they've already seen the anger. They've already seen hints of it. So if you've seen that, then why are you going to, well, you know the story because I can pick up the phone and then come get them. So that's part of the relationship issues where we're not wanting to talk through and find compromise. Okay, you come from where you come from, I come where I come from, and we come from different places. We have different backgrounds. We have different ways that we've been raised. So is it fair to say that we're going to automatically just come together and be experts with each other? No.
Right.
It's because we have to have communication. We have to talk through things. Be willing to say, okay, oh, wait a minute, something wrong there, and not just suppress it.
Right.
Because, I tell my God, because you want to have some good sex that night, or because you don't want to miss that meal. Any of those things that we put forth and we settle for things, knowing that I'm disturbed as a man, I feel a certain way. The same as a woman.
I was just about to say, coming from the side of the victim, I think that's one of the most important things is learning you. Because you literally, sometimes because of our childhood traumas or, things that we've experienced, we feel ashamed.
Yes.
And that shame puts you in a space of feeling kind of like you deserve a certain level of treatment, or you're not worthy of a certain other level of treatment.
Yeah.
So the same thing goes on both sides, is really like learning more about you. And because a lot of the things that we learn as children, these are the things that shape these ideals. And we create these thoughts in our mind thinking that
Yes,
we're supposed to be
absolutely.
these things when you
Yeah.
don't have to be.
So who do we learn it from? From our parents. The first woman that I knew of was my mother. That was my model. The first man that is their father, whoever father figure or mother figure that is. That's who teach us in the beginning. And so guess what? So we now take subconscious messages that we carry on based on what they did that way. Who am I not to do it that way? We begin the cycle to repeat whatever we've been experiencing. And so now here, recognize that we've been experiencing a cycle, how we were raised, learn behavior. And when we see it show up differently, how you see it, then okay, wow, then, we're not going to blame the parents, but they got it from somewhere. We're not created that way, right? So it's really, to answer your question, men will change, they do change. I've seen it from ages 18 to 60 in my classes, right? Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, it's possible. It's possible. So the thing is that because of your experiences, you have a defense mechanism. You should. You should have learned from whatever you decide to be with that person and whatever thing that you ignore, because there's some things I'm sure you ignored
Right.
in hope of, well,
Change can happen.
yeah, and I see a better part of you, but even though they don't see it themselves, you see it.
Right.
And so your hope is that they will demonstrate that change based on what you think they can do. You follow me? And so, but it gets to a point where we got to be mindful that we don't enable those behaviors, right? Because our silence is consent. When I see something I'm disturbed about it, you should speak to it right then.
Wow.
The man should as well, right? And because of our silence, it develops over time, and then we have these outbreaks, right? With all that
Silence is
suppressed energy,
consent.
all that suppressed stuff, all that suppressed energy builds up like a volcano,
Yeah.
and we explode because you know what's really happening? We don't know each other. You know, when we meet, we date, we show our best selves. We smell good, we look good, we talk all that good stuff over time, right? And then so we get comfortable with that, we get used to that. But all of a sudden, change starts happening, but we're not paying attention for whatever reason. Whatever narrative that we have that enables that, protects that, with the hope of it being better. And before you know it, years are gone by,
You caught up in it.
and then let a child come into the mix.
It's really
So, Doc, I got a question, and we'll get to this when we get back, but could the perpetrator be considered a victim?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I want to dive into that
Yeah.
when we get back. Relationships matter.
Relationships matter.
Welcome back to Relationships Matter. So before we went to break, Josh, you had a very interesting question that you asked the doctor. What was
So
it?
basically, like with all of what we've been speaking about, and obviously these are learned behaviors that are passed down. So that's why I said, could the perpetrator be viewed as a victim?
Absolutely. It happens in both genders. It's not recognized for men because we're looked at as being stronger, more powerful, and being able to control because of our masculinity. But we have feelings. And what's not talked about that people hurt. As my colleague and friend says, hurting people hurt people. And so if I'm already hurting, and then you kind of give me more reason to feel that hurt, right? So then I become victimized from that hurt, and then I retaliate. Even in women victims, right? A lot of them can become perpetrators because they've had enough, and they retaliate after years of being abused, whether it be verbally and or physically or both, right? So yeah, that pendulum can swing, but it's not looked upon as men because we're men, and men we're supposed to suck it up, don't cry, just handle it, right? But yet we're hurting deeply inside to the point where in our emotions we get a certain peak because we're in love, because we have a child together. All those things come up, it rises up.
How should men be looked at? I know you said, yes, we have emotions, but if you could, I've never heard anybody talk about like that. You know what I mean? Because I know how we supposed to look at our women. But how should we be viewed?
Well,
By men and by women.
Well, one thing, that we both have biological traits. Men have a level of estrogen. Women have a level of testosterone. It's just by the balance of nature, there's a difference, but we have it in us. And so I'm a huge proponent of letting men get in touch with their feminine side.
Okay.
So what do I mean by that?
Yes, let's
I don't mean that you now turn around and what society shows that you become gay or whatever. I don't mean that. I mean that to be a nurturer, to learn how to be a nurturer of oneself. It's how I treat me is how I'm going to treat my mate, right? So if I don't practice nurturing myself, then how do I know what that is? Other than what I've heard or seen on TV, but am I being authentic with my true nature in my beingness? To have the quality to be a nurturer. And so that's what I teach my men. Let's go inside. How do we know that? Fathers with daughters. That's a great example, right? How men are with their daughters. True nurturing. You know, and the same thing with women and their sons. That's expected. We see evidence of that. So based on that evidence, we have the quality to do that. Unfortunately, learned behavior says that men, you don't be soft, don't cry. Those are characteristics of something else. And so unfortunately, we've been given all this misinformation about how we deal with that nurturing side of ourselves, for ourselves, right? So we don't know how to love on ourselves. How do you learn to love someone else? If you don't know what that means, how do you define love if you don't experience with self? So those are things, Josh, that I talk about it starts with us. Everything starts with the individual first, in terms of healing.
So what's softer, a man with no emotion or a man with too much emotion?
You said what's softer?
I don't want to use the word weak, but he used soft. So
Yeah, or weak.
so
I don't
wanna-
challenged.
I don't wanna-
We said that we're challenged in certain ways, not weak. There's nothing weak about any of us.
Right.
But we have challenges.
I agree, but
Yeah.
the reason why I'm using these terminologies is because these are terms that are slung around out
Yeah,
there. You know what I
absolutely.
mean? To dismiss or disregard or whatever, you know, in regards to us or even for a woman. So
Sure.
but that's why I'm asking. Like, it's very dangerous. Like, for a man to just be hard all the time, or if he is then villainized because, oh, you too emotional, and like, what does that truly mean?
Yeah, there are extremes on both sides, obviously, right? How it's demonstrated, but because we become out of balance with that, you know, too much of anything is not good for us, you know, from your perspective, right? But I think that it's just finding balance, Josh, finding balance with that, you know, and this misinformation about us not being emotional, that's a major problem because we have emotions. We don't know how to express ourselves emotionally with that myth of, well, you're going to be looked at, you know, I don't want y'all to think I'm too soft or that I'm weak, as the term, right? But is that really the case? That's part of the misinformation. So I rewrite that story. That's a lie. We do hurt, but we just have to learn how to express it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So anger management is learning how to express that emotion. We all have it. There's nothing wrong with that emotion. It's what you do next after that emotion. Unless you have the information how to deal with that anger, that thing, right? Then you're going to do it the best way you know how. And how is that? How have you been taught? Was your father like that? Was grandfather, uncle? Who taught you how to be that way? Or was it society now today with social media and all these other influences with outside the home? You know, so it's peer pressure in school, all those things develop men into a certain way, not to know how to deal with their emotional side.
Right.
You know, so we have to redefine that, Josh, about what's weak and with all that. You got to change that language, man.
I totally
You know?
agree.
So I got a
totally
question. And speaking of the weak and soft and strong and all of this, so a lot of women now say, you know, I want to live in my soft girl era. And that's because, in my opinion, I don't know if this is public, but in my opinion, I think that's because women have felt like they've worked so hard. They're providers now. They are entrepreneurs. They're doing things that in traditional families, that's more so the man's obligation. So now women say they want to live the soft life. So for me, like the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy, because a woman that feels like she's got to be like that, she's operating more in her masculine energy, like that boss side. How does that balance look in a person that is a perpetrator?
Yeah, that's a good question. One thing that I'm really big on is that we don't know our history. Because first of all, women, right, in our culture were leaders. There were
Yes,
queens,
they
there were
were.
empresses. they ran societies,
For
right?
the family and
Right?
everything.
So that's not new to our culture, to our generation, but it's new to us here because we've been manipulated not to know those things.
Right.
So therefore, as men, if we don't know that, then we're going to look at a woman differently based on this Western culture. You see, that's a major problem. This Western culture has taught us, brought that whole image about our women, right? We don't know that women have as much balance to be strong leaders as well as anybody else.
It's tearing us up.
Yeah, it's
Like
tearing
in
us
a
up, man.
major
So,
way.
so to your
Yeah.
question, that person who is resistant to that has bought into the societal norms. They don't know any better. They haven't learned any better, right? So therefore, it's unfortunate that that a lot of our men don't get that, or they're intimidated by that. Because now look at the other side too. Also, men in this society have been beaten down and separated from our women because women were pushed up for a long time, and the black men were put at a lower level, right? In different many ways. And so there's, ego comes in, and the fact that how I want to see myself as a man, and here's a woman who's strong, and it doesn't feel good,
Yeah.
right? If you don't know any, because you don't know who you are as a king,
Yes.
as a person who can rise up and be along with your queen, right? Not separate from one has to be out of balance. How about we see each other here versus one way or the other? So that's a major problem. And so unfortunately, based on where the person comes from, the social background, how they were raised, will determine how they see that.
Duchess, and I know you've had some unfortunate experiences like within domestic violence and things like that.
Right.
What are some of the things looking back that you feel like you've learned out of that situation
That's a good
about
question.
you and about the perpetrator?
So, for me, about the perpetrator, I felt like, as a woman, you feel like you can change. You can change a person, you can change a man, or you can add value to him. I mean, that's what we were designed to be here. God created us to be a helpmate. So we're supposed to make everything better with our partner. So a lot of times you get so caught up in the space of wanting to be the reason why that person, or you want it to be the motivator of that change. You want it to plant that seed of ambition. You want to be the reason for why that person has chosen to kind of like move at a better vibration or a higher vibration. But in all actuality, you kind of like, it's working in the opposite. Like you think you taking your person up, but they really ain't moving nowhere, and you're going down deeper. Because now you're starting to feel like you deserve a certain level of this treatment because you don't see that progress. You don't see that change. And for me personally, I was growing up having childhood traumas, being a survivor of childhood rape. Like, it makes you so ashamed of so many aspects of you, especially as a woman. Well, even more as a man. Like, I can't even imagine. But when you're robbed of like your innocence, or you're put in a space where you don't get to choose or control like your sexuality or who gets to be exposed to that, it makes you feel ashamed, and you feel like you kind of deserve a certain level of that treatment. And you feel like you're tainted, or you're dirty, or you feel disgusted. You feel disgusted with yourself, even though you didn't do anything to create this level of disgust. What happened to you makes you feel that.
Yeah.
And it's hard for you to really like get out of that space, except when you choose to learn to love yourself in a different way, because what you identify with love is abuse at that point. But when you start really like learning how to love yourself, and people always say, well, ain't you healed? No. It's like an ongoing journey. Like, I don't think it'll ever be a moment where I can say, oh, I'm fully healed. Like, it could be something that I witness, something that I see that triggers me or makes me, like the video we just saw on social media. That was a very triggering video for me, because in college, I was dragged out of my grandmother's car by my boyfriend by my hair and beat because he thought I was driving somebody else's car, and it was my grandma's car. Like, so just seeing her getting dragged down the hallway, I'm thinking like, oh my God, like it brought back a trigger, even though I sometimes feel healed from that space. So I think it's like an ongoing journey with trying to figure out and redefine like what components of you are worthy of you holding on to, and which ones do you need to completely discard, especially when you're talking about bringing those things from childhood into your adult life.
So when we talk about, redefining, I want to dive a little bit deeper in that when we get back. Relationships matter.
Relationships matter.
What's going on, good people? We are back. Relationships matter with this very important topic. But last segment, I wanted to ask you, Duchess, because you talked about how you redefine yourself. And I know Doctor wants to step in, but I do want to ask you, like a person that is a victim, like what does that process look like? Because I know that that's not easy. And I know that there's layers to that because you're thinking about you're thinking about if I do decide to open up, will this happen again? Will I be a different version of myself because I'm protecting myself in a relationship? Will I fully trust that a man can be loving without being abusive? And I can keep going with these questions,
Right.
I just wanted to kind of set that foundation to let your spirit take you where it needs to.
Redefining me for me. So I was kind of forced into having to redefine myself because being on reality TV, it kind of puts you as an open book to people. So my childhood trauma was exposed publicly by somebody that I trusted. And for all the years of my life, I thought that I was okay. I didn't know that my trauma and me allowing the abuse that occurred in my past, I didn't know that it had affected me that way. I was in complete denial. I thought I was good. I thought absolutely nothing was wrong with me. I'm on TV, I look pretty, I'm good. But when it got exposed, it forced me to really take a look at myself. And in that moment, I had to analyze the friends. I had abusive friends. They ain't beat me, but they were verbally abusive. They were emotionally abusive, financially abusive. They were abusive to me, and I allowed it because I thought I deserved it. I had relationships. Some of them weren't physically abusive, but I was still tolerating a certain level of abuse at that point. And when I had to see it from the outside looking in, I'm looking at the social media posts and I'm reading the comments and I'm getting oh my gosh, the comments is crazy. It put me in a space to really understand that, okay, either you can read these comments and cry yourself to sleep. I went through a suicide attempt behind the social media aspect of it.
Really?
I went through a suicide attempt from the abuse side of it when I was in college. I dealt with battling with myself so many different times because I did not know what I deserved. And when I started really loving myself, loving the woman I am, the flaws, how I look, how I act, how I treat people, when I started really looking at me as a woman, it made me understand that some of these things that I allowed them because I thought that I would benefit from it in a different way. Or I would see change, or I would be the change agent. And the whole time it was just changing me.
So to touch on something real quick, because this is extremely powerful, but I know most people can identify with mental abuse, emotional abuse, obviously physical abuse. But I want to ask both of you, you being a professional too, the financial part of it.
Yes.
And we don't talk about that part enough.
Yeah.
So Duchess, I want to let you.
Let me tell
Let you start it, and then Doc, I want you to jump in on that.
It gets
after she
crazy.
But that's huge, though. That's a great point to bring up.
I want you.
Part of a real world that we live in today.
No, for sure. So
I literally thought I thought that I needed to pay for people's love. So that's what I would do. Whatever you wanted, if I could take you somewhere, if I could do something for you, I'm going to do it. And I'm thinking, I'm doing it because I want to do it. It ain't like nobody put a gun to my head. I wanted to do it, but I did it with a ulterior motive. I did it because I'm thinking, you know what? If I do this, they're going to love me.
So you were the
Financer. I was the one cashing out. Whatever. Oh, you want this? Okay, I get it. Oh, you want to do this? Okay, let's go. I'll pay for it. I'm trying my best.
Who's the perpetrator in those I guess, considered? I don't even know if you can say that. But
I guess so
if
those
you-
people accepted those gifts and they were.
Well, some of
would
these
be-
were demands too, and I'm willing to meet these demands.
Okay.
Or you know how some people be like, oh man, you know I can't really pay my bills this month. Stuff is so hard. Like I don't know what I'm gonna do.
But
That's
the point
somebody's asking for it.
At a
but they're
certain
not
thing,
asking
like we
for
talk
it.
about this, it's okay to do for your friends, but at a certain level, it becomes inappropriate.
It's got to be mutually beneficial.
Yeah.
But Josh, you made a good point that when you said, so who's the perpetrator?
Who is the perpetrator?
So the
No,
perpetrator.
that's what I'm asking
Yeah,
because I think
I would
this
like
is,
to know too, because
it is.
sometimes I felt like I was.
That means I'm the one that's taken advantage of. I'm the one that's setting the tone. I'm the one that's allowing. So as me but paying your way, that means I'm in control. I'm in control. That's what perpetrators are. They're in control, right? So there's a control aspect.
But are you?
But well, based on what you said, because I'm paying for love, right? So therefore, I'm setting it up. I'm the one who's actually engaging this now because of my needs. And when my needs aren't being met, I'm going to find a way. All of us.
This is
At the end of the day, think about it. When is the time where you're not looking to have your needs met?
right.
And so that is part of it. But it's interesting. We have to understand that neurologically, we have framed our brain. We have our neural network that's been wired now in that aspect. The power of the mind is very strong, right? So once I commit to something, I set that neural network up in my brain to now fulfill that, right? In my subconscious mind, it's established, my belief system. In a conscious experience, that's what's going to happen for me. That's what I'm seeking to happen.
Yeah.
So in my programs, in this domestic violence venue, that I get to change that narrative for them, give them some new information, new idea about what manhood is. Until you hold on to that false narrative, you're going to keep on doing it.
What's the false narrative of manhood?
That a man is tough, we have the right to do this, we have the right, we're in control. Look at the tax form. The tax form says what? Head of household. You see, so in our culture, the man is the dominant one. It happened a long time ago, but that's where we live. And so until we change that, until we find more balance in our culture, in this dynamic, it's going to be the same. And everybody's not strong enough to overcome that, to think for themselves.
So I'm listening, I'm learning, and the situation that she just articulated, right? And the way you explained it, she would be considered I don't know if it's abuser, but the person that's in control. Or would it be abuser? I don't know. How do you overcome that? Because I mean, it definitely comes from, in my opinion, lack of love, lack of self-love for yourself. Anytime you think you have to buy somebody's love and
Absolutely.
attention is definitely a lack of self-love and a little
Self-esteem.
bit of low self-esteem.
It was bad.
mixed in there. So
Absolutely.
how do you overcome that? You know, how do you fix that?
Allow the person to hear something different, that you are more than what you think you are. You are worthy to be loved. You are worthy. And so what do you mean I'm worthy? So let's talk about your worthiness. So now we're talking about building self-esteem, self-confidence, self-awareness, to realize that I am more than that experience. And so why am I not demonstrating that? Because of my experiences before and the narrative that I built that has to change.
What it was for me is I met this lady in New York at a church that I used to go to. And this lady would be fly every Sunday. I'm talking about every Sunday I would look at her and I'd just be in awe. Like, oh, she's so amazing. She's so strong. And one day we was just having a general conversation and she started talking to me about her past. And she started telling me about things that she experienced. And it literally was a parallel to the same experiences that I had as a child. But I never seen somebody go through what I go through and look like how this woman looked or carry herself the way that she carried herself or demand the respect in the room when she walks in the room. And to witness it, it was like kind of like adoration. It was like, oh my gosh, like, and then for her to tell me her real truth story, I'm like, so I'm not what I went through. If this woman went through all of this, and some of the stuff she went through was 10 times worse than some of the stuff I experienced. And I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself and putting myself in a trash can, and this lady has herself on a pedestal. And she has herself on a pedestal because of some of the things she went through. But I had this mentality, especially with family shame. If it's public and people notice about your family, then people look down and it just put me in a box that I didn't want people to not just look at me like that, but to not look at my family like that. So I'm willing to be the sacrificial lamb so that nobody gets to experience that shame outside of me. And when I got to build a relationship with her, it made me really understand, like, I am so amazing and worthy, and now you can't tell me I can't walk in a room. I don't even gotta say nothing. And it's just a beautiful feeling. But I didn't know that feeling until I was able to witness it in someone else, and her being willing to share her testimony with me so that I could, and she didn't even know that I had those experiences.
So one of the things you said that's so powerful is that you found purpose now, right? So, you know, we have a life coaching school, right, an institute, and that's one of the things, one of the models that we use called the purpose effect. So imagine you finding purpose. When that woman came to you, you saw that mirror. She mirrored your experience, and so the thought was, but look, she found purpose in her experiences. That's hard. You may have to go through that hell to be the person I am today. But the evidence says yes. And so learning how to find purpose in everything is a game changer. Because now, guess what, Josh? I'm no longer the victim.
Yeah.
It's not it's not what I desired, but guess what? Based on my thinking, it was required.
Right.
And so
Yes.
therefore those steps, those journeys I went through got me to this space. If it were not for that, would I be the woman, the man that I am today? So that's the game changer, finding purpose. And it's hard. It's like, okay, I would have rather been another way. But based on my experience, how I was raised, my environment, all those things put me in this place. And the way I've been thinking, the narrative I built got me here. But the good news is, can people change? Yes.
Yeah.
It's about finding purpose through your whole life, not just the good times. That's easy. All the success, that's easy. But what about the things that were challenging? If we were not challenged, how would we grow? How would we grow? If everything was just easy
Challenges
peasy,
Yeah.
That's
challenge gives us opportunity to change.
That's good. That's good.
And so the male perpetrator is giving himself an opportunity to change.
Yeah.
Right? We don't like the way it happened, but it did. So let's deal with reality. That is our reality in this human experience. So as spiritual beings having this human experience, there's always that great potential to change. Right? And so I believe the universe gives us opportunities every day to change based on our thoughts that we have and then what happened.
So
So now, did you get the lesson?
Yeah.
If you didn't get the lesson,
You
guess what's
gotta
going to
repeat
happen?
it.
You're
You're
going
gonna
to
have to
repeat
repeat
it.
it.
Yeah.
You're going to repeat it. So when you're making choices, different
And I
things you
did.
said,
I repeated it so many times
because
till
you
I
had not
learned
got the lesson yet, because of the thinking, because of the low self-esteem, because of the narrative you built. You told yourself, well, I deserve this. How powerful is a person to say, well, I deserve this? When I tell myself I deserve something, guess what? It manifests. And so to change that, you have to change your narrative. You begin to put your people, place, and things change, and you begin to change and shift. Right?
Yeah.
And that's the good news of the human spirit.
Yeah.
so
It's always possible.
So when we get back, no, that's beautiful, powerful. Y'all over there cooking. When we get back, more about this conversation. Next segment, go ahead and prepare y'all. We're gonna talk about forgiveness and grace. When we get back, relationships matter.
Relationships matter.
What's going on, everybody? We are back. Relationships matter. Now, to bring this in, I already prepared our lovely guest / family. But because of all the heaviness and because of all the things that we talked about, I wanted to dedicate a little bit of time towards forgiveness and grace. And I want to start with you, Duchess. Like, Cause it's not just about childhood things.
No.
You know, I'm sure you have had your fair share of experiences up until this point. And what does that look like for you? You know what I mean? In regards to forgiving yourself and forgiving others.
As far as forgiving others, one thing that I've really allowed myself to pay attention to is background. Like what ignited this behavior? For some of one of the relationships I was in, he witnessed his mom consistently go through abuse time and time again. His father wasn't around, but the men that she chose consistently abused her in front of him. So in me learning that from his childhood, it kind of helped me understand, like, dang, imagine if that was like what my childhood was like. My mom and dad been together since 8th grade. Still to this day, just had their 40th anniversary. And I didn't see any of that in my house.
Right.
I never experienced witnessing it in my family. But because of the shame that I had on myself, I allowed myself to that was like our neutral ground that we stayed on. You know what I'm saying? Like, I went through this as a child, you went through that as a child. It kind of allowed us to kind of like be each other's
Trauma bond.
exactly. And when I started to not so much allow these things to be the excuse for them, because it's no excuse, but it does allow you to have a level of understanding when you see or are fortunate enough to be able to understand what somebody came from and why they allowed that thought or that behavior to exist in their own life because of what they witnessed. And for me, with forgiving myself was very hard because I was confused and I didn't understand why I had to go through this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, God, why me? Like, questioning God at certain times in my life. Like, why would you allow me to have to deal with this battle or that battle or whatever? When in all actuality, I had to sit down and really, like, forgive myself for even thinking that I deserved that.
What's the most traumatic thing you've experienced?
The most traumatic experience would probably be, so for 8 years of my childhood, I was raped and molested by my uncle. And for the longest, I couldn't forgive this person. Like, I held on to this anger for a long time.
Where was your dad during that time?
So my dad, and it's crazy because my dad and my mom, like, they are great parents. Mm-hmm. That's why I hate when people say, oh, your parents are bad, so this happened to you. No, bad things happen to children because of bad people. That doesn't mean that my parents weren't, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But I loved being around my grandma. And I would always want to be at her house. Mm-hmm. So being at her house, he was there. So it kind of worked itself out. I'm the firstborn grandchild. So I was my grandma's little baby doll. And I love being at my grandma's house. But now for me, at that time for me, being at that house meant that I get to love my grandma, but I also got to go through this.
Did you know that it was wrong?
I didn't even know what sex was till I went to college. Like, the actual act. And it's terrible because my grandma kind of like played a level of manipulation because she didn't want nothing to happen to her son.
So she knew about it.
She knew about it.
Do you think a part of going there was also a part of the performance that you were okay with?
What you
Not
mean?
intentionally, but so like a victim, like when we had a conversation earlier, right? And the events that happened in her situation started off at 5 because of what she witnessed. She didn't think it was wrong. So even when mom went away, she was still performing the acts that she had witnessed on dad. Mm-hmm. Not thinking
anything was wrong with it.
Nothing was wrong. So that's why I'm asking, because it's a great question from the standpoint of how many people, right? Especially we talk about kids, but how many people, and it probably could happen to adults too, that are in these situations where they probably really don't think that they're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And you said, well, I love going to my grandmother's.
See, this is the thing. It was grooming happening that I wasn't aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's where it took a turn. Mm-hmm. And it was also fear attached to that too.
From you or
for me, like forceful fear. Like, you're scared for your life. You're a child.
He was saying, what was he saying? If you tell,
I'll kill you, I'll do this, we'll strangle you, we'll, like, and to witness these things happening to, like, girlfriends and stuff, And then to feel that type of pressure coming from somebody and you have no control, you don't know what to do. And I'm a child, so I really don't know what to do.
Yeah, from a child perspective, it's not, you don't have any understanding about what's going on. You know, it's family, it's a family environment, and so all things of the fear that's been injected, the allowance from the grandmother and the uncle, all those dynamics played into this experience.
Right.
Did you ever think to
And
be
then-
like, I'm good? Like,
Then
I'll stop?
the other part of it was the weed. I'm a little kid smoking weed because he's using the weed to groom me. But I don't know none of this stuff. I'm a kid. And growing up, being around, so Oakline was like the hood. We didn't live in the hood. My daddy was the first black firefighter. But my aunt would babysit us when we got off the school bus, so we had to go ride the school bus in the hood to go to her house. So we got to experience a lot of hood behaviors. I saw a first person get shot in the head in front of me at like 7, 8 years old. So I'm experiencing things that a child shouldn't even have to witness. And then you see the older kids and they're glorifying smoking and so as a child, you think that you want to emulate these behaviors because you want to be accepted as being cool. Especially when you're the ones who, all of the kids in the hood is like, oh, you bougie, you live over there in the white hood, that white neighborhood. You come over here from the school bus. I'm doing things to think that this is going to make me accepted because everybody else is doing it. Yes. So him having the access to it and throwing it in my face, now I'm feeling like, okay, I'm going to just smoke. Like, smoking was my escape because it made me numb almost. Like, it didn't make me think about it. It didn't make me care. It was just like a cover. You know what I'm saying? Like, it covered up everything else. So then I'm now turning to smoking weed all the time because that's my escape now. And thank God, I remember my mama, she used to be like, weed is a gateway drug. Don't be coming in my house stealing my TVs. I'm sitting here like, Ma, it's just weed. I'm not about to be stealing no TVs. But thank God that gateway never opened up to other things because some of the people that I grew up around, they weren't so fortunate to be able to have that testimony. That weed turned into this, to heroin, to crack, to all these other experiences, which it was just, for me, I had to realize like, this, I know this isn't right, but I tell one person about it, right, in the family. They don't believe me. Now I'm down, I don't want to tell nobody else. Do you know the shame that that's going to bring on this family? Like, now I'm scared to even tell the truth.
No, I feel you.
So I'm scared of this nigga, excuse my language. I'm scared of this man. Now I'm scared to tell the truth to the people that actually would care if they knew this. My daddy found out when I was in my late 20s. My daddy wanted to kill him even then, even though I done experienced 20 years past the trauma. That's how angry it had him. Still to this day, he don't speak to his own brother.
So when we get back, and Doc, you can help her with this, because I'm going to try to segue
Yes.
smoothly and as quickly as possible. But when we get back, talk about, because it seems like there's still things that you do to escape.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc, maybe you can help start this
Sure.
journey. So when we get back, Relationships Matter, we will talk about the healing journey.
Relationships matter.
Welcome back to Relationships Matter. So before we went to break, Duchess gave us a very vivid picture of some of the experiences you had as a child. So now, Dr. Malsby, I want you to address some of what Duchess spoke on.
Yes. So give thanks, and again, give thanks, Duchess, for you being vulnerable enough in this platform to tell the truth, because this type of truth is going to help someone else listening. Yes. You're right. It's far reach beyond this room right here. Mm-hmm. So the childhood trauma, that adverse experience, that now we're seeing that even before your relationship traumas, you had the initial trauma. So how deep does it go then within family? Mm-hmm. The construct of family, the love, the compassion, where we get our nurturing, we get all those things, and when it's not that. as a young child, you have no control over that, right? You're just a victim of the family dynamic. And so, so now we see how you've been living out that dynamic ongoing, right? And so what's good about that, Josh, you point about grace and forgiveness. So you're here, that's your grace that you've been given. In spite of all that drama, that trauma, all those things, the fact that there was purpose behind it. None that we want to see or hear about, but yet here you are to be a witness, to be able to give your testimony for some other young woman, even some young man also, that also gets raped and abused by family members, right? We heard those stories.
Absolutely.
And so now here you are, now finding purpose and the opportunity to heal based on those traumas, right? So that's the good news, right? And so, in terms of grace and forgiveness, one of the things about forgiveness is it's misconstrued that we say, well, I forgive you and that's done. Then let something else happen. And you'll see did you really forgive?
Yes.
So the acts of forgiveness really letting go. We don't forget, but we let go. We no longer give that power what comes behind it. You said anger, resentment, all those things come behind holding on to something that no longer is going to serve you, right? What's going to be the results of you holding on to it? More anger, more suspicion, more all those things that come with that negative energy. So forgiveness is about regaining your true self and your power, right?
Doc, you also touched on something else during the break. Can you also elaborate on how the cycle continues? Because you said, okay, family violence, or some other things that kind of go into how we then react and do things to other people based on stuff that we might see there as well.
Yeah, it's learned behavior. It's learned behavior, Josh, is that family violence is what we grew up, how we've been nurtured and taught that as young people, if the older people are doing this must be the right thing to do. Now, why else would they do it? These are people I love, these people that feed me, house me, all those things. I'm going to honor that, right? So that cycle begins based on that training, based on that learned behavior. If there's no intercession for something else, it just develops ongoing. So as I said earlier, even as we come to adults, we're still having these childhood experiences, these adverse experiences based on what we know, what we learned. So neurologically, it's set in our belief system. This is how we operate, based on what we believe. So any conscious experience is going to go back to what I stand on, what I believe. And then when I'm triggered as an adult, I can easily go back to that childhood trauma in that moment because it's never been released and let go. It's never been forgiven. There haven't been any results to realize that, okay, you know what, that was then, this is now, let me move forward. Because if I carry that, then it just gets worse and worse and worse, right?
So
And it turns out.
three questions while we got the doctor here. For one, do you forgive yourself?
I was just about to say, for me, forgiveness is started. You know how people always say forgiveness isn't for you.
It's for the other
it
person.
isn't for the other person. It's for you.
Yes.
That's a real statement.
Yes.
And when I forgave myself, it allowed me to be in a position to understand. I started talking to my grandma. I started learning things. I learned that when he was in elementary school, he had an experience at a Boy Scout trip that put him in a space where he was a victim. So now it's me understanding, like, dang, if he learned that as a child, and we're not that much in age different for a person to be like, oh, he was 20 years older than, he wasn't that, he was like maybe 15, 16 years older than me. So he was a child even when he was imposing some of these behaviors on me. And that was the psychological abuse that he experienced. So me forgiving myself allowed me to get the courage to care enough to want to forgive him.
So you do forgive yourself?
Absolutely.
Do you forgive your grandmother?
Absolutely.
And do you forgive him?
I absolutely do.
Is there anyone we left off the list?
No. For me, that forgiveness, it came from understanding. My grandma comes from a time where she experienced something very similar to me. And everybody that talked to her about her experience told her, get over it. So her way of dealing with that trauma isn't the way I would deal with it. It's the cyclical behavior that she was put in the time where it's really taboo to even talk about these things.
Is that where she got the grooming from?
No. And that's the crazy part of it is completely isolated situations. Like my grandma's experience, she experienced her abuse from an absolute stranger. She didn't even know this person.
Like rape? Or,
Yeah,
okay.
she was raped.
Okay.
So, and her family members was like, you got to just get over this. Like, just forget about it type stuff. So that was her way of dealing with it. And with my uncle, his situation wasn't a part of the family. It was outside of the family. It just trickled down for it to be a part of our family through all of those experiences of, I guess, people not facing it or not accepting it or not dealing with it. So now it's just a cycle of hurt.
So, two-part question, both of y'all can answer as a victim, as an educator. What are your words for people that say just get over it?
That's
The only way of getting over it is to literally do the work. So when people say get over it, I'll be like, first I got to do the work. And first you have to allow me to do the work. And you got to be understanding that I got to do the work because it happened to me. You can't place a timeline. Like, you know how people say you can't place a timeline on grief?
Yeah.
That's a form of grief. I'm grieving something that I experienced and a part of me that died. I'm grieving. And how I may deal with grief might not be the way you deal with grief, but be patient with my process and support me how you can if you choose to do that. If you don't, then I understand.
So one of the things that I have to bring this in, right, is spirituality, not religion, right? There are many ways to that path. So, but our nature is love. That's our nature. And so getting back to learning with grace and forgiveness, those are biblical spiritual connotations, right, that we've heard of, right? So realizing what does that really mean? There's a surface level of it, why people say, let's let it go. That's not, the reality is to find love in your heart, to bring peace within yourself first in order to be able to release and let go and forgive. That's
So
the grace that we have.
Peaceful. A lot of us aren't in that space.
Right, we have to be able to find peace. So there's no forgiveness, there's no grace without finding peace and love. That is our nature. That's how we've been created, through love, out of love. And so until we get back to that, then the rest is going to be challenging. The love of self is where the grace and the possibilities to get deeper and go inside to forgive and then let it go. And not just use the words, right? Words, they can, but the actual doing the thing, the demonstration of that thing, to realize when I say it comes out my mouth and put it into the universe, now how it's going to come back is my reality. Because as you said, I have to do the work. I have to go inside and let it go, knowing that I'm just punishing myself by holding on to this negative energy. We have to release it from the inside. Then I can turn around and look at you and look at you and look at you and say, yes, I forgive you. Yes. My demonstration is, if I get triggered by somebody else, it doesn't come back up. I don't forget it, but it reminds me I can be grateful that I've let it go and forgive myself and those who are in my path.
See, I'm gonna let it end on that, Doc. But I also, before we officially end, I give flowers, from Relationships Matter, to our family. I don't like the word guest, but I'm gonna start with you, Duchess. Like, we've had a chance to vibe and talk and just life and talk
Pray.
about God and pray and all of those things. But I salute you, man, because you've gone through a tremendous amount of challenges and adversity, you know what I mean? And for you to still sit here and be a form of light, a big light at that, truly amazing. So that lets me know that people who put time in can make it happen. I love you. I'm proud of you. I feel that you're one of the most awesome women/human beings that I've had a chance to meet, connect with. So keep doing the work that you're doing. You know how we rock, and it's nothing but love from on this side. So thank you so much. Definitely appreciate you. And Doc,
Yes.
I don't know if you hear it enough. I didn't get a chance to dive into what got you into this work.
Yes.
But from a man to man, somebody that's doing what you're doing, I love you, brother, and I think that it's very powerful and so necessary. And then just even your mind and how it works and how you're able to articulate the difficult things.
Yes.
Because it's not about doing what everybody want to hear. You saying like, no, we got to reverse this. We got to unlearn and we got to relearn.
That's it.
Which 90% of people, I know stats, I ain't got nothing in front of me, but just based on the conversations and everything else, ain't nobody really out here trying to do no real work.
That's right.
So the fact that you're able to work with people who have been dismissed and just disregarded altogether because of what they've done, it's not excusing the behavior, but to give people, anybody, a chance to become a better version of themselves.
Yes.
God bless you, brother.
Give thanks, brother. Give
Please
thanks.
keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you for coming and blessing us. Thank you for coming and blessing us. And this has been yet another dope, amazing, powerful episode of Relationships Matter. We will catch y'all the next time.
Relationships matter. I need you to understand. Relationships matter.